morning, good afternoon, good evening, all. It's Bear here. And I'd like to welcome you to my YouTube channel, aboxwithnolid. A channel I'm creating not just to bring the awareness around the lived reality of trauma and adoption and trauma and child removal trauma. But I also want to bring what I've learned over many decades of being around this stuff, being a practitioner and living with it, with the hope that when I can get what I've learned and experience out there before I pass, but also to make a difference in people's lives coming from someone who's lived with it, who's been around it, and who's tried all these things that, that can work with the right resources. This is the next video in the adoption series. And what I hope to achieve with this video is to create an understanding of an area that is very difficult to explain. When you really look at the reality of identity of presence, that way that we see ourselves, the way that we identify as who we are, the base and foundation of our goals and aspirations and what we're seeking to resolve, find, and create. And that physical awareness of how we see ourselves, that reflection that we interpret in a mirror. One way of understanding this, when you look at the way, in an ideal situation, when a child is born, placed in the mother, and that whole secure environment, there's all these biological processes that we are designed to use to create this identity of presence, this identity of self. And over the time growing up in a secure family with a mom and dad and all this sort of stuff, the biological components of facial mannerism recognitions, vocal tone, all these aspects we are physiologically, as human beings, designed to use to build this process of identity of presence, identity of self, are removed when you look at adoption and foster care, are actively blocked when you look at adoption and foster care. We try to adapt them from the non-biological family members that we are raised with, but the biological process of how to transfer them into a structure of self-identity are not there because the biological triggers are not there. It's like expecting a gate to open when the key you're using is wrong. It won't open, and it will work in a different way, or it will become adapted in a different way. But it is still not the same. And this is one of the primary structures of the fog that I've spent decades trying to explain and be understood, not only within the system that creates and pushes and condones and actually, encourages adoption, the industry that's worth billions in the world, but also within adoptees and those who have gone through foster care, in what we value and what we pursue to try to get the help and healing that we do, that we need. If we cannot heal our core base, we won't heal our trauma. That is a basic reality. And that part of us that we plug everything into is our identity of presence, how we see and believe we are. Words don't touch this stuff. This is all a complete felt sense of who we are. Our ability to defend and protect and pursue and all these facets come from this base. When you're looking at the trauma responses of shame and everything else, and where because we've had to accept certain things, it alters how we respond, sometimes in the more extreme and sometimes in the completely submissive. All this comes around this identity of presence. How do we see and feel in every neurophysiological and conscious sense of who we are? As I said in the beginning of this video, the way our identity of self or identity of presence is created is through all these biological markers. It is affirmed that I am part of my family group, my community, because of same facial structures, same vocal tones, same mannerisms, and all these different things that I've explained in numerous videos on this channel. When you look at it from a fog and a survival state, we are trying to emulate all of those that we instinctively recognize in non-biological family. We are trying to learn how to emulate those behaviors in the behaviors that we recognize of those that raise us. But it is still a learned skill, not a natural sense of being. And there is a fundamental difference. Yes, that can create a level of functionality. And in a lot of cases of adoption and surviving foster care through a hell of a lot of effort, it does. But when this gets challenged when we're older, when the triggers that we can no longer avoid through keeping our life busy start to present themselves, when we are facing circumstances with our own biological children and so forth and so forth, when this core identity of presence is absolutely threatened and questioned, because it's a learned skill, it's something that we have developed through observing from a survival state. When that falls, this is where the harm that I see so often in where a lot of adoptees and people who have lived through foster care end up, because there is no understanding in this world of what has actually broken, what has actually fallen. There's this scrambling of counseling and services, maybe if you can get access to them, to try to fix the physical events that are creating this. But that identity of presence is broken. That identity that we've created has fallen down. And because we're not around those people that raised us constantly, day in, day out, it's not going to get rebuilt. And because it has fallen when it was tested, we won't trust it. It won't be the same. It's like if a house gets, pretty much demolished by a storm and you rebuild it using the same materials. It's not the same. There's always these compromises and differences, and it will fall again even sooner. Structurally, it is not as sound as it was. And that is the base that I see play out in so many. When you just sit back and you read through the forums of what people are putting up on adoption forums and foster care forums, and you just see it play out when you're aware of it. That because there's no base to plug anything into, it doesn't have the permanency that it has when you do have that base. And because our base is learned, not naturally developed, through and supported by the epigenetics that we've inherited, because we're learning it from non-biological family. It's just that level of difference needs to be understood when therapists go to work with those of us that are dealing with this stuff or trying to heal or resolve or rebuild from this crash. But also in understanding of when you're looking at children who are placed, having that understanding there in the beginning, to put in abilities and resources to build a more secure physiological base around that identity of presence, of what part we are in our family, of what part we are in our society and world. That understanding of in the building of that and the reinforcement of that from a survival base affects education, opens up paths of bullying and all these other facets of being targeted that reinforce that separation, that reinforce that need to be more aggressive or violent to defend it or to be more withdrawn. All these structures, when you're looking at support for relationship issues and all that, to have that understanding within there that, okay, I'm working with an adoptee or I'm working with someone that's gone through foster care. I need to value and help them understand and relearn or learn that identity of presence as part of this negotiation, not through either inadvertently or deliberately make them a target, which happens all the time. Because this identity of presence, we created it, we need to defend it, we need to reinforce it. It is something, a tool, a skill that we have, so we have to use it It is not naturally within us. It's something we have to activate, reinforce, and use. Therefore, we will defend it more often. And it will get more, you'll get a reaction when you challenge it far more readily than a person who has this natural belief in this is who I am. You'll get a more aggressive response. And that plays out all around us. I see it every day I go out and I look at the world, because there are more adoptees than people realize. And I'm in my local area, I'm aware of this. And I look over year and decade how their lives play out. And what's the reasons for what they go through and why they go through. When I talk to them, or just through observing them, just through listening to them, seeing them as they pass in the street, say hello and walk away, their state of how they feel, what they're dressing and looking like, and their demeanor. You can clearly see all these structures that I talk about on this channel play out. The reason I created this channel is to try to bring, yes, the awareness and the understanding, but also, as I said in the beginning, to get this, what I've learned, out there, in the hope that it can make that difference. Because if all the ingredients are not there when we try to heal, 9 times out of 10 what we're trying to heal won't work. We are biologically designed to work in a certain way. We need to work within that design to not only develop but also to release and heal. A large component of all the bases of our biological design is our identity of presence. That complete felt sense of every facet of who we are, our consciousness, our being. I hope this makes sense. I will do further videos and working on this, as I always do. And I will do my best to keep making these videos. But I really hope you guys understand and value these core things, because, as I said, I've watched for decades the ignoring them and how they play out. I love you guys' comments and feedback. Please be mindful, please be safe, and I'll see you all next time. Hope.